Hey, Years in Life. I'm here with my friend John Jackson, who's a meditation teacher, someone that I've had the opportunity to get to know and study with. And I've asked him to come on today to talk to me about his practices, how they started, and share some information. Morning, John. How are you?
Good morning. Thanks for having me here today.
Definitely. Thanks for being here. I appreciate it. I wanted to talk first about the bun, or probably what a lot of Westerners call bon. Um, I studied some of that with you, but could you talk about what that is and how it relates to the Western idea of shamanistic um, studies?
Sure, sure. So many people may have not have even heard of Bun before, but um, Bun is the ancient indigenous spiritual tradition of Tibet that dates back pre-Buddhism. Buddhism was introduced into Tibet in the 7th century, but there was already a very rich and deep spiritual tradition in Tibet at that time, which was Bun. So it's continued to survive up until this day, although it's gone through a number of persecutions within Tibet over the different centuries. Just, well, Tibet's no different than any other place. There's ups and downs, and they've had difficult periods. Um, but that's the basic idea, and it's very, very similar to Buddhism in its goals and its thoughts. In fact, you could even call it a Buddhist tradition because it simply traces itself back to an earlier Buddha than Shakyamuni Buddha.
Hmm. And when you say Shakyamuni Buddha, you mean the Buddha that people think of when they think of Buddha.
Correct.
And
Yes, yes.
most people are maybe not familiar with the fact that there have been a bunch.
That's right. Shakyamuni Buddha refers to Shakya was the clan from which the Buddha was from. He was actually a prince within a kingdom of the Shakya kingdom. So that's why he's referred to as a Shakyamuni Buddha. So he lived roughly 2,600 years ago. Although we don't know those exact dates, archaeologists keep digging up, new things. But he was born near Lumbini in Nepal around 2,600 years ago. Um, but the Buddhist tradition and the Bun tradition believe that there are many different Buddhas that manifest in different ages and different places. That literally there's 1,000 Buddhas over the many eons of time. So there's Buddhas that have occurred in the past, and there'll be many more Buddhas in the future, according to both traditions. So the Bun traces its origins back to an earlier Buddha who lived several thousand years before, named Tompa Shinrab. But the teachings of this earlier Buddha are very, very similar to the teachings of the Buddha that came 2,600 years ago, known as Shakyamuni Buddha, or what many people refer to as the Buddha. But even within Buddhism, there's believed to be many, many Buddhas and many people who have achieved the stature of a Buddha.
Hmm. And
In other words, to achieve complete enlightenment.
how did you come into this? Because Buddhism is relatively well known, but
Mm.
I feel like Bon is less known. How did you find it?
Oh, absolutely. It's much less known, and there's a lot less number of teachers who have been teaching in the West. Um, so the way I came to it, I'd been studying and practicing meditation since my teen years, over 40 years at this point in time. And I spent pilgrimage in India, in Nepal, Thailand, Japan, back in my 20s. And I connected with Tibetan Buddhism at that time and other forms of Buddhism and Hinduism, many, many different flavors you find across all these countries in Asia. Um, but whenever I moved to my current home in Charlottesville, Virginia, I connected with a Tibetan Buddhist teacher named Geshe Tardo, who was the Gelugpa order, which is the most popular, or shall we say, the most populous Tibetan Buddhist tradition. There's 4 lineages of Buddhism, plus the Bun in Tibet. And I studied with him for some years and was on the board of directors of that particular organization, and then met Tenzin Wangyal Rinpoche, who at that time was a young Bunpo Lama, the first one that was really traveling and teaching much in the West. And helped him establish a center here in Charlottesville, Virginia, called Ligmincha, which is now Ligmincha International, and it has centers in 26 countries around the world. And let's see, one, two, 5 large retreat centers in the North America and Europe.
Hmm. Amazing. Look at
Mhm.
this, like flourishing. How,
Yeah,
yeah.
that really is flourishing. And since that time, there's been a number of other Bunpo Lamas, including Tenzin Wangyal Rinpoche's teachers, who have spent a lot of time teaching in the West.
Mhm.
So those teachings are much more accessible now than whenever I first connected to it.
Mhm. Yeah. I mean, it's the curious thing about technology, kind of cuts both ways. There are some
Hmm.
problems that it creates, but because of technology, we have access to teachings as Westerners we may never have access to. So it's really true.
Absolutely. And you know, that's another interesting thing about the pandemic that we're experiencing at the moment, is that because of that, so many of these teachers in Bon and in Buddhism have begun to teach live via Zoom.
Right.
And before they would only teach in, retreat centers, and you had to travel to them
Right.
to sometimes long distances to another country
Mhm.
to be able to hear these teachings. And now it's so much easier. It's provided so much more accessibility. And I don't think we'll ever go back to only having those face-to-face retreats.
Mhm.
Hopefully, when this pandemic passes, what I think will happen is that we'll once again get to do face-to-face teachings, but those will also be streamed out live by Zoom or some other similar technology so that people from all over the world can participate. I think it's a great opportunity for people to get a taste of many of these traditions that aren't in our own backyards.
Mhm. I feel the same. Because of the pandemic and innumerable other external stressors that we're going through, people are very familiar with suffering. So they're looking for ways to understand that, maybe ameliorate that. And there's a
Mhm.
lot of really valuable teachings to come across. I'm curious, you touched a little bit about the overlap with Bon and Buddhism. Um, could you talk a little bit about the elemental aspects of Bun? I know that people understand or have a conception about Buddhism is you sit, you breathe, you empty your mind, and the Bun seems to come at it from a different orientation. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about that.
Mhm. Well, there's many different forms of meditation. It's said that there's 84,000 methods for the 84,000 thoughts. So what that literally means is that different people need different things,
Hmm.
right? So there's not just one way to meditate. When people think about meditation in the West, many times they're only familiar with mindfulness-based stress reduction, or MBSR,
Hmm.
which is a very simple form of meditation where you simply become aware of your breath, you become aware of your body, you become aware of your thoughts.
Hmm.
And this is great. It's very helpful, been clinically validated. And actually, many insurance companies will pay for
Yeah.
MBSR training these days because it does improve your health and well being.
Right.
However, that was borrowed from Buddhism by John Kabat-Zinn, who's the person who created MBSR. He's a psychologist at the University of Massachusetts. Um, but it was a bit of a sanitized version of just what is called calm abiding
Hmm.
in Buddhism, where you learn to simply abide and connect with that calmness and stillness within yourself.
Hmm.
Well, that's really fundamental to all forms of meditation. It's the very first thing you have to learn to do to become familiar with your mind, to become more self-aware. But there's literally hundreds of other forms of meditation beyond that, which we can develop much deeper states of awareness, can work to transform our emotions, to transform our awareness, to transform our compassion, our ability to love, our ability to love ourselves, to accept ourselves, and to accept other people. So meditation is really prescriptive in the sense that there are many different forms that are suited to specific issues that are coming up in our life and to specific individuals, because each person, of course, has their own unique makeup, so to speak.
Right. People
Uh,
are,
so what
I'm
so
sorry.
what's right for one person isn't work at all for somebody else. So
Yes.
that's one of the necessary components of working with a teacher that has understanding of many different forms and can help you discover what's right for you.
Yeah, I was going to say that people are put together by different causes and conditions. So there are different places in their life. And one of the interesting things about the bun that I've come across is it's more of a naturalistic, almost what Americans may think of as a transcendental form of practice. It's connecting to nature, it's connecting to the elements. There's a lot of practices built around the chakras and these energy centers. So in some ways, I feel like the austere presentation of meditation in the West could be opened up to include more of these elemental practices. I think it might be more invitational for people.
Yeah, I agree completely. The tradition in Bun is very earthy, I would say.
Right.
It's very connected with the here and the now and where we're living. And you're right that the nature component is really important within it. Um, and the element practices, like the element system within Bun is based upon the five elements of earth, water, fire, wind, and space.
Hmm.
And each of these are manifest as qualities within ourselves.
Mhm.
For instance, if somebody has a lot of fire, they've got a lot of energy, right? They've got a lot of vitality, and they may really enjoy a lot of communicating with other people and social activity. But if you have an excess of fire, you become angry easily. You're easily triggered, right? Or if you have a lack of fire, you can become depressed.
Mhm.
So there's this very beautiful system of meditations and ways of working in nature that you learn to connect with the qualities of these elements to rebalance yourselves, to rebalance all the qualities of the elements within ourselves so that we're a whole being and we can enjoy all these beautiful qualities within ourselves without too much or too little
Mhm.
of these different elemental qualities.
Mhm.
And these five elements are the fundamental basis for Tibetan medicine as well. Tibetan medicine looks like in a similar way to Chinese medicine, in that it's trying to bring balance and harmony within the physical body and mind. It
Mhm.
doesn't separate the body and mind. The mind and the body cannot be separated. If you
Mhm.
think about it,
Right.
when we're physically ill, it affects our mind, right? Our mind's very cloudy and dull and so forth. And whenever we're emotionally stirred up, like we're really angry or we're really tense, it also affects our body. So
Right.
you really have to look at the body and mind as an integrated whole
Mhm.
and bring health and balance to both.
Mhm. Who would you say that you come across, or who would you offer would be it'd be most advantageous to study the bun? Can you think like this group of people, or who would you suggest it for? People maybe you wouldn't suggest it for.
Well, I think different people are just drawn to different things. It's hard to know why.
Mhm.
But it's interesting. Sometimes I'll meet people if I'm leading a retreat, and they'll come up to me after one or two sessions. They'll say, "This just feels like I've come home. This just feels so right." And I think that that's the kind of the ideal situation that somebody just it clicks. Sometimes things just click for us, and we realize this is it. This is it for me. And it's not it for somebody else, right?
Mhm.
But the people who just feel that sort of connection. But on the flip side, many of these practices, I think, are of general benefit to practically anyone.
Mhm.
Like, for instance, you and I have been going over the Saloon practices, which
Yes.
are a series of physical and breathing exercises that, frankly, I've practiced these and taught them for over 25 years. And I've never found a person who didn't immediately after the first time they did it, they didn't say, "I feel better now." Right?
Yeah. I can offer that studying Sagang has absolutely changed my life, changed my
Mhm.
practice. I practiced for a long time, and it's changed my practice in a fundamental way. So I
Yeah,
agree.
yeah. It's really a simple series of just five movements with combined with the breath.
Mhm.
That one way I help people understand what it does for you is that like some days when you wake up you feel like you got out of the wrong side of the bed.
Mhm.
Right? It's just like you're kind of grumpy and not feeling in yourself and so forth. If you spend 15 minutes doing Salung on one of those mornings, suddenly you feel fine again.
Right.
It just kind of sorts you out and rebalances physical and mental and emotional being so that you're back in balance. That's essentially what it's about, is bringing ourselves into balance and harmony. And
Uh,
it too is based on these 5 elements.
we could use a lot more balance these days. I think you agree.
I
Uh,
would agree.
John, thank you.
Can't we all?
I really appreciate you taking the time. Three Jewels Coaching, or what's the name of
That's
the?
right. Three
Okay,
Jewels Coaching. So if people just search for Three Jewels Coaching or John Jackson Meditation, Google search will turn that up as well. But yeah, that's the. So I work with groups as well as individuals, and basically work with each individual or group and create a custom program for each person depending upon what they're interested in and what their needs are. A lot of organizations kind of have a cookie cutter approach where you go through our training program. Here's step one, step two, step three. I don't find that really works very well for everybody. And I prefer to hear what people are interested in, and then we work it out with one another and help them find their way, find themselves. That's what it's
fantastic.
about.
Yeah. Well, I really honor your work. I've learned so much. I very much appreciate this. I know you have some retreats coming up, so I'll tag all that stuff and people can find you. And I hope we get the chance to talk again real soon.
Great. I appreciate you having me here. Have a great day.
You too.